At 2:11 a.m. on September 26, 1983, Lina Kovalenko sat alone in a concrete bunker 30 meters below ground level near Moscow, staring at a red blinking light labeled START, ICBM inbound. This was not a drill. The air was cold, temperature kept at exactly 16 degrees Celsius to prevent the computers from overheating. The room silent except for the mechanical hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic pulse of that red light. Lina had 60 seconds to follow protocol, verify the threat, contact Central Command, and initiate a response that could kill 200 million people in the first hour alone. She reached not for the command phone, but for a pencil. 32 years old. 4 years at the Strategic Missile Defense Command. Zero experience making decisions that could end human civilization. The protocol manual sat on the desk in front of her, open to page 147. Nuclear Launch Detection Response Procedures. She'd memorized every word during training. Contact Central Command immediately. Relay threat assessment. Await retaliatory authorization. 3 steps. Simple, clear, designed to be followed without hesitation. Lina's hand hovered over the red telephone, but she didn't pick it up. If you want to see how Lina's decisions saved the world, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Cold War. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Lina. The Soviet early warning system had just detected what it believed was a missile launch from the United States. Not a possibility. Not a maybe. The console confirmed it with absolute certainty. The blinking red light. The piercing 800 Hz tone that filled the entire command center. The blip climbing steadily on the trajectory screen. A bright white dot moving across the black display. Everything Lina had trained for screamed that the world was about to end. The Oko satellite system was the Soviet Union's most advanced early warning technology. Launched in 1979, designed specifically to detect the heat signature of ICBM launches from American soil. The satellites orbited at 36,000 kilometers, positioned to monitor U.S. missile silos continuously. When those silos opened, when those missiles ignited, Oko would see it within 90 seconds. And Oko had just seen it. The system wasn't supposed to make mistakes. It had cost 400 million rubles to develop. Soviet engineers had tested it 1,200 times. Every test had worked perfectly. Launch detection, trajectory calculation, impact prediction, all flawless. But something felt wrong. Lina had checked the satellite telemetry data 3 times already. The signal path looked too perfect. A clean rise from the American heartland, steady speed, no trajectory arc, almost perfectly linear. Real ICBMs didn't fly like that. They couldn't. Physics wouldn't allow it. A genuine missile launch generated massive amounts of data turbulence. Compression waves from the rocket exhaust. Electromagnetic interference from the guidance systems. Heat flare signatures that bloomed and pulsed as fuel stages ignited. The telemetry should look chaotic, scattered, violent. This signal was smooth. Mathematically smooth. Like someone had drawn it with a ruler. Lina pulled out an old, dog-eared manual from her desk drawer. Not the official protocol book. Her personal notebook, filled with hand-scribbled notes from her university thesis at Moscow State University. Technical Institute for Physics and Engineering, class of 1975. She'd written her thesis on signal reflection anomalies in satellite-based radar systems. The thesis had earned her top marks. It had also been completely theoretical. Academic exercise, no practical application. Until now. She flipped through yellowed pages covered in pencil calculations and diagrams. There, page 34. A chart showing how high-altitude cirrus clouds, when illuminated by low-angle solar radiation, could generate false positives on infrared detection arrays. The ice crystals in the clouds reflected sunlight at specific wavelengths. If a satellite's sensors were calibrated incorrectly, if the angle was just right, Those reflections could look exactly like rocket exhaust. In school, it had been theory worth 20% of her final grade. Now, it was the difference between life and death for everyone she'd ever known. The red light blinked again. The 800 Hz tone shifted to 1200 Hz. Escalation warning. The console display updated with new information that made Lina's stomach drop. Not one missile. 2. Separated by 40 seconds of launch time. Standard American first strike doctrine. Launch pairs to ensure target destruction, even if one missile failed. Protocol was absolutely clear now. One missile could be a malfunction, a system error, a false reading. 2 missiles meant war. Deliberate attack. No room for interpretation. Lina was required to escalate immediately to Central Command. Contact General Petrov. Relay threat data. Await retaliatory directives. Prepare to unlock the launch authorization keys secured in the red safe behind her chair. Her hand hovered near the comm switch. The red telephone sat 15 centimeters from her fingers. 1 call. 3 sentences. This is Station 7. 2 ICBMs inbound from American Midwest. Awaiting authorization. Instead, she picked up her pencil and pulled out a blank page from the logbook. She started calculating. Lina wasn't even supposed to be on that shift. She was filling in for Senior Technician Volkov, who'd called in sick with bronchitis at 6 p.m. the previous evening. Lina had been home, already changed out of her uniform, about to cook dinner. The phone call came at 6:47 p.m. Report to Station 7 by midnight. 12-hour shift. No explanation. She'd arrived at 11:30 p.m., signed in with Lieutenant Orlov, descended the 30 meters in the service elevator. The bunker smelled like cigarette smoke and machine oil. Volkov's coffee cup still sat on the desk, half full, cold. Lina had only partial security clearance, Level 3 authorization, sufficient for monitoring and reporting, insufficient for decision-making authority. She couldn't override system alerts. She couldn't countermand threat assessments. She had no business questioning what the Oko satellites reported, but she knew how the data worked. She understood the mathematics behind satellite telemetry better than anyone else at Station 7. She'd spent her entire university career studying exactly this type of signal processing. She called up the raw telemetry feed from Vega 7 and Cosmos 12, the 2 satellites currently positioned over North America. Both satellites showed the same blip. Same trajectory, same speed, perfect correlation. That should have confirmed the threat. 2 independent systems reporting identical data meant the detection was real. But Lina noticed something in the thermal signature data. Vega 7 detected a heat bloom at the launch point. Standard ICBM exhaust signature. 3,000 degrees Celsius. Exactly what you'd expect. Cosmos 12 detected nothing. No heat bloom. No thermal signature at all. That inconsistency was critical. It meant the heat signature wasn't real. It was reflected light, bouncing off something in the upper atmosphere and fooling Vega 7's infrared sensors. Lina grabbed her pencil and started scribbling calculations on the logbook page. Altitude versus velocity. Solar angle at 2:11 a.m. Moscow time, which meant 6:11 p.m. in Montana, where the missiles supposedly launched. September 26th. Sunset would hit the cirrus cloud layer at approximately 6:10 p.m. local time. She calculated the angle, paused, checked her math again, then did something that violated every regulation she'd ever learned. She reached behind the console and unplugged the communications relay cable. The console went completely silent. No more 1200 Hz tone. No more flashing lights. Just dead screens and the soft hum of ventilation fans. Lina had bought herself exactly 2 minutes before the system's failsafe would automatically reconnect communications and alert Central Command to a station malfunction. She used those 2 minutes to verify what she already suspected. The display now showed 3 inbound ICBMs. The system was escalating the threat assessment automatically. 3 missiles meant a coordinated first strike. It meant Soviet leadership would have no choice but to launch immediate retaliation. Lina didn't flinch. She pulled up the intercept data from the communication satellites. Every genuine ICBM launch generated massive radio chatter. American military channels would light up with encrypted traffic. Bomber bases would activate. Naval submarines would surface to receive launch orders. The intercept data showed nothing. Normal traffic levels. No encrypted bursts. No emergency frequencies activated. She checked the secondary sensor network. Ground-based radar stations scattered across Siberia. They should detect incoming missiles 8 minutes after launch. Their data fed into the same system, but through different pathways. All ground stations reported clear skies. No contacts. No threats. She cross-referenced the satellite thermal data one final time. Vega 7 showed 3 distinct heat blooms. Cosmos 12, positioned 2,000 kilometers away with a slightly different viewing angle, showed absolutely nothing. It was sunlight, reflected off cirrus clouds at 12,000 meters altitude. The exact scenario she'd written about in her university thesis. The exact false positive she'd warned could happen if satellite calibration drifted by more than 0.3 degrees. Lina typed a command into the console. Telemetry divergence detected. Alert status. Unresolved. Manual override initiated. Operator L. Kovalenko, Tech 3. She reconnected the communications cable. The console came back to life. Red lights. Alarms. But now there was a manual override flag in the system. Central Command would see it. They'd see her ID number. They'd know she'd questioned a nuclear threat alert. She opened the shift log and wrote, 0211 hours. 3 ICBM alerts detected by Vega 7. Thermal signatures inconsistent with Cosmos 12 data. Ground radar shows no correlation. Assessment. False positive caused by solar reflection on high-altitude cloud formations. Threat assessment. Invalid. No action required. She stamped it with her ID number, signed it, then sat back in her chair and waited. 47 minutes later, the steel door opened. Major Antonov stepped into the command center. He was supposed to be home. Station commanders didn't work night shifts. Someone had called him, probably Central Command, wanting to know why Station 7 had flagged a nuclear alert as invalid. He walked to the console, read the log, looked at the telemetry data, then turned to Lina. You froze the alert. Lina kept her voice steady. Yes, sir. You cut communications? For 118 seconds. Yes. And if you'd been wrong? Antonov's face showed nothing. No anger, no approval. Just the flat expression of a man who'd spent 20 years making impossible decisions. Lina met his eyes. If I'd been wrong, sir, I wouldn't be sitting here. None of us would. The bunker was silent. Somewhere above them, 30 meters of concrete and steel, Moscow was waking up. People drinking morning tea. Children getting ready for school. 8 million people who had no idea they'd almost died in nuclear fire. Major Antonov reached for the tape log mechanism, the device that recorded every console action for permanent archive. He pulled the magnetic tape from the machine, held it for a moment, then tore it in half. This never happened, he said. He dropped the torn tape into the document shredder. The machine ground it to ribbons in 3 seconds. Then he paused at the door, turned back. You did the right thing. Just don't ever do it again. And just like that, he walked out. The steel door closed with a heavy clang. Lina sat alone in the bunker, staring at the console that had almost started World War III. There were no medals, no commendations, no debriefs with intelligence. Analysts. No phone calls from grateful government officials. No reprimands either. No investigations. No questions about why a Level 3 technician had overridden a nuclear threat alert. No one outside that bunker ever knew what she had done. The event was erased from official Soviet military records. The torn tape log disappeared. Station 7's shift reports for September 26, 1983, showed nothing unusual. Routine monitoring duty. No incidents to report. Lina's decision, one that may have prevented the deaths of 200 million people in the first hour of nuclear war, was quietly buried under layers of classification and deliberate silence. She never talked about it. Not to her husband. Not to her parents. Not to Volkov when he returned from sick leave 3 days later and asked how the shift had gone. Quiet, she told him. Nothing happened. The following year, Lina submitted a transfer request to civilian scientific research. She cited health reasons and desire for less stressful work environment. The request was approved without question. No interviews. No paperwork explaining why one of Station 7's best technicians suddenly wanted out. The truth stayed locked inside her. She took a position at the Institute for Atmospheric Research in Kaluga, 190 kilometers southwest of Moscow. She studied atmospheric interference patterns, solar radiation effects on satellite communications. The same theoretical work that had saved the world now applied to weather forecasting and civilian satellite operations. She published 7 technical papers between 1984 and 1991, all under the pseudonym L.M. Sokolov. Her real name never appeared in scientific journals. She never attended conferences, never presented her work publicly. But that research was later used in the development of Soviet weather satellite systems. It helped eliminate false positives in early warning networks. It probably prevented other false alarms that never made it into history books. No one ever connected her name to the near catastrophe she had prevented. In 1992, after the Soviet Union collapsed, a Western journalist researching Cold War nuclear incidents contacted her old institute in Kaluga. He was writing a book about close calls during the Cold War. He'd heard rumors about a false alarm incident in 1983. He asked if anyone remembered a technician who had worked in missile radar. The secretary brought the message to Lina. She read it twice, then filed it in her desk drawer. She declined the interview. She wasn't ready. She didn't know if she'd ever be ready. Not until 2006, 23 years after that night, did she agree to sit down with a defense historian from the Russian Academy of Sciences. They met in her apartment in Kaluga. She made tea. They talked for 3 hours. She didn't give him details. She didn't explain the calculations, the torn tape log, Major Antonov's silence. She simply said, "One night, the system blinked red. I chose to wait. I checked the data. The data was wrong." The historian included her in his book about Cold War incidents. A single footnote in Chapter 7. Unidentified Soviet technician likely averted nuclear escalation through discretionary inaction during false alarm incident, September 1983. Her name wasn't mentioned. The historian said it was better that way. Safer. Even in post-Soviet Russia, some secrets remained dangerous. Some people who read the book assumed the technician was a man. Soviet military technicians were usually men. The historian's language was deliberately vague, using neutral pronouns throughout. Lina never corrected anyone. She never wrote letters to editors, never contacted the historian to clarify. She lived the rest of her life quietly in Kaluga. She grew tomatoes in a small garden plot behind her apartment building. She fed the stray cats that wandered the neighborhood. She fixed broken radios for elderly neighbors who couldn't afford repair shops. She never returned to military work, never went back to Moscow, never visited Station 7, even though it was declassified and turned into a Cold War museum in 2003. She never told the full story, not even to her daughter, born in 1986. When her daughter asked what she'd done during the Cold War, Lina would say, "I worked with satellites, technical data analysis. Very boring." In a drawer beside her passport was the same pencil she'd held that night in September 1983, the pencil she'd used to calculate solar angles and atmospheric reflection coefficients while nuclear war blinked red on the console in front of her. The graphite was worn down to a stub. The eraser had hardened with age, turned yellow and brittle. The wooden shaft had tiny tooth marks where she'd chewed it nervously during those 47 minutes waiting for Major Antonov. She never used it again, never sharpened it, never threw it away. No statues were built in her honor, no monuments erected, no streets named after her, no textbooks mentioned her name. But the world kept spinning because one technician with a pencil and a university thesis chose not to follow the rules. If this story moved you the way it moved us, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people who need to hear it. Subscribe to hear more stories about unsung heroes who shaped history behind the scenes. People like Lina, who saved the world and never asked for credit. Real people, real heroism, rescued from forgotten archives. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? Are you watching from Texas, Germany, Russia, Japan? Our community stretches across the entire world. Has someone in your family ever served? Ever risked everything? Ever made the quiet choice that no one saw but everyone depended on? Let us know you're here, so Lina Kovalenko doesn't disappear into silence. She deserves to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen. Thank you for watching.